So it's time to start another project. And the weather hasn't been very cooperative. Where we thought we were going to start seeing a change, we did, but it got colder and wetter. Lots of rain, even some snow. So while I've got the dirt, I'm not ready to move on too far. So I decided to start prepping for the next project. And our weather, or our growing season here in the Pacific Northwest, is kind of short. And a lot of plants, they kind of want to be warm a little earlier in the cycle, and I don't have a good way of doing that right now. So what I'm going to try this year is putting a hoop, or hoops, over the beds so that when we plant our plants and we buy starts, because they're already, started, thus the name. So by putting this hoop over it and getting it into the bed, I can start the season a little earlier, hopefully. Keep them warm, they'll grow healthy, they'll grow faster earlier, and maybe I won't end up throwing away so many good tomatoes or other plants that still want to produce, they just haven't completely gotten through it. So I looked around at what other people are doing and thought, well, I'm going to do my own way, and this is all trial and error anyhow. And since I'm going to buy taller plants, the plants are usually 12 to 14 inches tall. I can't really just make a hoop right out of the bed because the plant will be too tall for it. So I'm going to try something a little different. I am going to make hoops out of the poly pipe that I use for drip irrigation. This is 5/8 inch poly pipe. And then to get it to stand up so it just doesn't go, real flat, so it kind of goes up and over, I'm going to drive fiberglass rebar into the ground and have it stick up maybe a foot so that when the poly pipe goes up it and then curves, I have a little taller space for the plants to be in there. And I'll secure them to the inside edge of the raised beds using these little, I don't know what they're for. They're just called standard clamps. Oops, they're just called standard clamps. And they'll clamp around the edge of the bed, and then the pipe will go through it, and then the rebar will stick up over it, and then I can have my hoops go up and over. So that's my plan right now. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if that actually does what I need it to do. And like I said, this is all trial and error, right? I've never done it before, but after this season, I will have done it. It's important to get these brackets put in nice and level so that the rebar that sticks between them is vertical. If it's not, then the hoop's not going to be vertical, and the weight of the sheathing over it's going to cause it to droop. The screws that I'm using are straight bladed, and trying to drive straight bladed screws in with a power driver turns out to be problematic. So I switched to using the hand screwdriver in a lot of cases. It just worked better. It was easier to control it. It was easier to get it in straight. And then, if you hit a piece of the grain, it was a little off. But ultimately, they went in well and fit the way we wanted them to fit. Joan came out after a bit and helped me put the hoops in. It was a little bit of a struggle because as you push the hoop down over it, it would push the rebar down into the dirt, so we kind of had to reset a little bit, get them in the right place, and figure out how we were going to hold them so that there was half of it above the dirt and half of it below the dirt, and it worked out exactly like we had thought. I found this plastic online, of course. It's not quite as clear as I had thought it would be. The pictures online looked a lot clearer. It's 6 mil, so it's heavy enough to resist the wind and not tear real easily, and it's light enough that hopefully it'll let the sun through and help the plants stay a little bit warm, or keep it a little bit warm in there so the plants can be warm. We then took some 1x2s and put them down on the lower edges and stapled the plastic to them, and then flipped them over so that the plastic or any runoff would go down over the board rather than going into the bed. And then I drove these nails in to keep them upright and to kind of keep them in position, but we can still get them out if we need to pretty easily. The ends were a challenge. We had a couple of different ideas, or there were a couple of different ideas. Originally, I thought I would use a completely separate piece of plastic to do that, but then I didn't really know how I would attach it. We wondered then, we'll just gather it and figure it out, but it didn't gather really well. On one of them, we tried using those little old-fashioned paper brads before staples existed, and that didn't work. So ultimately, in the end, we ended up using the universal tool, the universal fix-all. If duct tape won't do it, baling wire will, and that's what we did. We just poked baling wire. So again, farming by trial and error. Maybe it's gardening by trial and error. But I got to thinking, if we could put this tent over these, maybe that would let us start a little bit earlier, keep them a little bit warmer when the nights are still cool, and maybe they'll grow better. Because, well, we want a bigger garden this year, and so I think this will work. And along the whole way, I had to keep thinking, this is temporary, this is temporary. You're not building something for prosperity. Well, kind of, but not long-term prosperity. No,
Don't look at me. I can't think of
for
it.
the future.
There you go.
Because if we're going to do this again next year, I'll probably do something a little bit different. But it's a little fiddly, it's a little strange to get together, but we got it this far, and we'll see how it goes.
Yep. Thanks for watching.